a few months ago I was discussing with someone. I think it ended up not on our YouTube channel, but you can find it there. The idea that perhaps it's better for non-Jews to convert to Judaism. There was someone here who has an idea to actually start proselytizing, missionizing Gentiles, convincing Gentiles straight up that it's better for them to become Jewish. Classically speaking, we have not done that. The Rambam, for example, says we don't necessarily go out of our way to look for converts. If there's a Gentile person who understands the truth of God's worship, so he should be a ben Noach, be a proper Noahide. It's not that difficult. And if he truly wants to take on all the commandments and join God's people, he may do so once he has proven his sincerity. However, we don't go looking for converts to Judaism. I don't think that's the right way. At least that was the main opinion. So my source was in Kethuboth, the 11th page, where it says it's only the zechut for youngsters to be converted. A zechut means it's to their benefit. Okay, it's meritorious for Jews to do so. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, let's say, a regular Gentile being forced to convert by the sword. There were religions, and there still are religions, that believe in conquest. Islam has this, and Christianity used to have this, conversion by the sword. And we don't believe that is the case. We think that's actually wrong. And it's only an advantage for youngsters. Why? A youngster who's brought up from the beginning within Judaism could benefit from that. Because why? He has never tasted sin, so to speak. That is, his Yetzer Hara is not strong. When you have a legitimate grown man, grown woman who choose Judaism, it means they are willing to give their self-control a try. But to force them into Judaism, why should they have to give up all that which is permitted for them and that which they enjoy in this world? Whereas someone who's raised Jewish, we're hoping that because he was on board as a child, he won't be tempted as much, and the temptations that he remembers won't also be a draw for him later in life. So it's a zechut, as they say, for youngsters to be converted. And by the way, there is even an out. If you have a child who is, for whatever reason, converted to Judaism by his parents, he's a 2-year-old, and both his parents convert as a couple to Judaism, and they're going to raise him and his subsequently born Jewish children, subsequently born Jewish siblings, his own parents' children. So he's going to be Jewish his whole life. He still has an out. There is a window of opportunity when he turns bar mitzvah, becomes of age, to turn his back on Judaism. Of course, it's a technical halachic issue. You can read that in the Rambam, what he brings. It's in the Shulchan Aruch, I think. So you'll be able to find it there. So it's not even 100%. But it's harder, Chazal say, for a Jewish person to keep all the commandments. My disputant's arguments centered around the fact that a Jew who sins is rarely punished with death. There are major sins for which a person will be punished with death with proper due process, witnesses who warned him not to do so specifically. And in any other case, the Jew perhaps wouldn't have any form of punishment. Perhaps he'd have to bring an atonement sacrifice. He'd have to be lashed. But a Gentile, if he violates one of his own rules, the only punishment prescribed is death. So to save these Gentiles from death, it would be better for them to be Jewish. And I don't think that's a proper understanding based on what Chazal are saying. Chazal basically say you have to look at responsibility. To be a Gentile, you have very little responsibility. You just have to make sure not to violate these major prohibitions. Don't murder. Do not commit adultery. Don't be a homosexual. Don't blaspheme God. Don't worship idols. Don't steal. As long as you're staying on the straight and narrow, you are safe. You don't have to worry about punishment or having to bring atonement. Anytime you are unwitting in a sin, you are exempt from anything. The court cannot punish you for anything. You're safe. You have very little responsibility. You don't have to worry about, maybe I ate the wrong food. As long as you didn't eat a living animal in a cruel manner. As long as you didn't hurt anybody else, you're safe. You didn't have to keep the Sabbath. Whereas once you're Jewish, there's very little for which a court will put you to death. However, you have a lot of responsibility. And you're playing with kareth. Kareth is not a punishment prescribed to Gentiles, if I'm not mistaken. Kareth, being cut off entirely, whatever that might be. Rambam himself has his own definition. It's disputed. Kareth is prescribed for many more infractions, especially for those who, for whatever reason, somehow avoid having the death penalty inflicted on them, either because the court cannot have due process, he wasn't warned properly, whatever it might be. It's a lot harder to be a Jew. You're held to a much higher standard. There's many things that many Jews aren't aware of entirely, okay, regarding diet and ritual living. It's 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 almost surprising that how we do this. And even if one were saved from the death penalty or lashes or kareth, there's still many instances when the Torah prescribes proper restitution or proper atonement, whether by sacrifice or other fines. It's very difficult to be Jewish. So it would be easier for someone just to remain non-Jewish and not have to get himself involved in this. That's what we warn people, by the way, before they convert. Don't you realize that you're taking on a greater risk? You don't have to be Jewish. God never wanted it from you. Just be good in your own life, and you should be safe. Being Jewish is a bigger challenge. It's much harder. It reminds me of the philosophical argument between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, which, by the way, when you think about it, sometimes their philosophy and their worldview would be affected by their halachic argument. They might have a tradition, a general understanding of the way the halacha is, and from that they learn how to approach certain big questions in life and philosophy. And on the other side, you might have it that you have big philosophy, the great questions between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, and that would influence their halacha. So one philosophical question they had was, better for man to have never been created, never been born, or not? And they eventually argued this for a long time, came to the conclusion, well, perhaps it would have been better for man to be born, been created by God. But now that he's here, he has to make the best of the situation. Gentile doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't have to put himself in the situation where he's held to these standards and has to watch out to keep the Torah. So better that he not put himself into that. And that's why I am not an advocate for proselytizing or missionizing the Gentiles. If they want to help out the Jewish people, there's much they can do. If they don't want to help us out, that's just fine. They should go live happy and healthy lives in their own countries, within their own borders, safely and securely, as long as they are not harming each other and they are keeping God's laws.